Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are looking at some special vehicles during the anniversary event, and these are going to be the vehicles that are going to be removed from the game after, or removed from sale I should say, after the anniversary event is over. Now they're all ground and also aviation vehicles that have been around for a very long time, and if you are interested in picking these up and you don't have the G to do so, make sure to pick it up from the Gadget store. You can use my affiliate link. You may be able to get 3% discount as long as the product isn't already discounted, and you also get my decal in game, which is pretty cool. You also get to help me out a bit, which is kind of nice, so that's also part of it. So let's go through the vehicles one by one. The first one being the M26E1. This is an American medium tank, which is at 6.7 for the Americans at rank 4, so it's going to be useful for being able to research rank 5 and below, which is quite nice, but there are other options at this BR which I think are pretty nice, which are also lower price. One of the things is remember to only pick these things up when they're 50% off, when these things move over to other nations, so that would be the first tip. But I think the M26T99 is probably a little bit more fun because it has the rockets on it. The Super Hellcat is super fun as well. Has the 90mm M3 on the Hellcat chassis, very quick and very fun, and then also the T28 as well. The mobile land ship is a lot of fun as well. The T29 might also go on sale, so the M26 out of all of these is definitely the weakest, which kind of sucks for it. It's even weaker than the M46 in my opinion. So what is this vehicle? Well, the M26E1 is just an M26 with a different gun. The gun itself is the T54 cannon instead of the M3, and what it gives you is a little bit more penetration. This means that the T41 shell, which is the standard one that you use, has 224, 170, 76mm of pen. Now, on top of this, you get a longer reload, which is kind of damning for the vehicle itself. It's at 14.4 seconds, where the standard Pershing is at 9.7, and since a lot of people are shooting from 7 to 10 around this BR, this can really harm the vehicle in its entirety. Everything else about it is exactly the same, basically, as the Pershing, so it doesn't have the best armor. Most things go through it. It only has this 130mm plate on the front and 203 here, or 178 that people can go through. They can also go through the turret. It isn't volumetric. It is volumetric armor on the breech, which is kind of cool. It has the same engine, but it is heavier than the standard Pershing, so it's a little bit slower. Can only go 40 kilometers an hour faster. It's definitely one of the slower medium tanks that you'll find around the BR. So what you're basically getting from this is a vehicle with slightly more penetration than the standard Pershing, a longer reload at a higher BR. This vehicle is not worth the cost, and generally you can find much better options in the tech tree at 6.7. The 552 and 450 rewards on it are pretty nice, but as I said, you have other options such as the Super Hellcat and the T28, which fit in the 6.3 lineup, which are very, very fun. At 6.7, you already have the Super Pershing, the T34, and 3 amazing light tanks. You don't need a slightly upgunned Pershing. The Pershing already isn't the best vehicle at 6.3. It struggles against heavy tanks because of its penetration, and the M26E1, the penetration that it gets when it comes to its extra gun does not help you against the heavy tanks that the Pershing goes up against. This is overpriced and not a very good vehicle. It's a no. For Germany, you have the Panzer IV 70A, which is also getting removed, and it is a 4.3 tank destroyer that you can find right here at rank 3. So it's going to be useful for researching rank 4 all the way down to rank 1. Now this thing is 2,980 GE, so half off. It would be obviously 50% of that, and the equivalent price to the KV-1C. And basically it makes a little bit more SL than the KV-1C, but the KV-1C gives you so much more in terms of armor mobility, and also gun compared to the Panzer IV 70A. And there is a big reason for this. A lot of people think about the Panzer IV 70V and have good memories of it. It's a pretty decent tank destroyer with okay armor. As long as you don't go up against, you know, crazy machines, you can generally do very well at, you know, just being quite low to the ground and dealing good damage in a straight line. The Panzer IV 70, though, has a real problem with it, and the fact is it's slightly higher than the Panzer IV 70, so its visibility is higher, and also it has this panel right here. Now, you might look at this angle to be like, oh, it's 80mm, that's not bad, you know, effective thickness goes up to like 130, 140 maybe, but this panel right here, this flat panel that you see, basically means that this vehicle gets penned by anything that touches it. It's constantly 80mm across, so whenever you see the front of this thing, you just shoot this flat panel and it kills it, because that's where all the crew is. It has a 4-man crew, 3 in the turret and 1 here. The gun itself is very powerful. It's the 75mm Pak-42. It's got really good penetration on it for its BR. It'll kill anything. But because of the fact that this thing doesn't have a turret, because of the fact that it's really tall, and because of the fact that it has that flat part, it means that you are very vulnerable to dying, and also dishing out damage is harder to do because of the fact that you don't have a turret. It does get the add-on armor, which is nice, but it doesn't cover the area that you need it to cover, which just means that it's in a bit of a rough spot. This thing, I'm normally against non-turreted tank destroyers anyway, basically because of the fact that when you have these vehicles, you can get caught out really easily and you can't be as aggressive with them. But this one kind of takes the cake because you can't even go straight ahead against an enemy, you know. They don't even have to go for your barrel, they can just shoot this, and pretty much everything of this BR has 80mm worth of pen. So this, unfortunately, is not a great vehicle. At 4.3 as well, you don't have the best lineup. You have obviously the tank destroyers like the Jagdpanzer, the Hetzer, and then the 4, and then the Sturmmehl. But at 4.0, you actually have the pretty good lineup with the 2 Panzer IVs, even though the Panzer IV-J is not great. And then you throw in the Dicker Max or the Stug 3G and have a bit of fun with it. So I would rather take the Jagdpanzer IV over it, even though you have the worst gun, you have the much better armor. And the Hetzer, you have the lower visibility, which just makes it easier to play. I don't think this thing's good. It relies too much on its gun and nothing else. The next vehicle is actually the Tempest Mk.V, but for Germany. Now, the Tempest Mk.V I've always really enjoyed. You can see it's 7,100 GE right now. Once again, you can get it for half price in the sale coming up. So, the Tempest Mk.V for Germany differs from the British one slightly, in the fact that the Mk.V for the British gets access to secondary ordnance and can get like a guaranteed kill basically with the 1000s, whereas the German one doesn't get access to any secondary armaments. So instead what you have is just a sole out-and-out fighter. Now, when we compare it to other vehicles that are around the BR of it, so stuff like the Ju-288, which is a great grinder, you know, it has really good SL rewards, really good RP rewards. You can make a ton of RP and ton of SL with it, and you can turn off your brain. It's perfect for being able to get up to jets, up to all of the rank 5 stuff, if you don't want to, well, work for anything. It's such an easy plane to play. You basically just bomb bases, go back to the airfield, do it over again, and just keep doing that over and over again. So if you want a grinder, that's the one to go for. And also, if you want one which is going to be useful in ground realistic as well as air, you go for the B2, because of the fact that it has the Mk./103s, and they pen a lot if you run armored targets, 95, and you can annihilate people on the ground as long as you have air superiority. If you want an out-and-out fighter, you know, you can go for something like the D13, but the D13 has unfortunate issues with it when it comes to facing super props. The Tempest Mk.V does a hell of a lot better job at it. It has access to the 420mm Hispanos, which I've always really enjoyed, as a ton of ammunition, and this thing has a very, very powerful engine. And also, It doesn't get, I think one of the differences between them as well is it doesn't get, I have to actually check if this thing actually gets it or not. Yeah, it gets the 150 octane fuel, which makes it so much better, the Tempest Mk.V for the British, but the German one doesn't get that, but it still is very effective, because what you do is you climb with it, you dominate the high altitude airspace, and then you dive down, and it's one of the best divers in the game in a boom and zoom way. After about 3 turns though, you lose a lot of your speed, and it also doesn't turn very well after that, so you got to be super careful keeping this engine happy when it comes to speed. It does have a ton of power behind it. It's the Napier Sabre 2. I really enjoy the Tempest. The Tempest was actually the first plane I got into rank 4 or 5 with in the British tech tree, and as an air superiority fighter, it's super fun to play. It basically plays like you want the Typhoon to play. So the Typhoon's really good at diving, but it has awful control at high speeds, so it makes it really hard to use when you look at stuff like that, whereas the Tempest Mk.V has that high speed control, so you can come in, smash, and then get out again. It's a beautiful fighter to do that stuff with. It's a shame that it doesn't get its secondaries, so it's useless in other game modes, but if you want something that is a fighter, that is an air superiority plane, and will grind you very effectively Germany up into rank 5, this could be the plane for you. I'd personally recommend it, but it is very niche in its usability. The next one that it's getting removed is the IS-2 Ravenge, which you can find here. It's basically an IS-2 1944 without all of the nice extra bits that you get on it. So you don't get the top dishka, you don't get the add-on armor, you basically just have a naked IS-2 1944, but it has a pretty cool skin on it. That's basically the vehicle. So you see right here, this is what you get, which looks really cool. So the IS-2 in general at 6.3, I think this is a terrible vehicle. I have done for the longest time. I've never had any issues dealing with them. I've always thought that it is bad, and the reason for this is, first of all, bad gun depression. So you can't get the gun down, and also the second reason, the reload is nearly 30 seconds. So most vehicles can get off 3 shots to your 1 in this, or 2 shots at least to your 1 in this, and you get to donk somebody every so often. At the same time, the shell only pens up to 205, which will struggle to go through actually quite a few vehicles at this BR, especially after the volumetric shell change. There's a lot of heavy tanks at 6.7, 6.3, and 7.0, and you have to place your shots correctly with this thing. If this thing was just like something like an FV4005, where you donk somebody and they just die, then yes, it would be a good vehicle. But that isn't the case. You still have to place shots with this thing, and since its gun handling is pretty bad, and it's also got really bad gun depression, it's hard to do. So what you end up having to do is donking somebody and then having to rely on your armor to survive, and your armor's not bad, you know. It's got like nearly 200 on the front of it. Over here it's only 120 though, so it's really easy to go through. The actual gun mantler itself, as you can see, literally only 115 millimeters, and what most people do when they see you, if they don't know when to pen you, they just shoot you in the gun, so you have to repair anyway. And then you just sat there like, well, I'm on reload and I'm repairing, so that kind of sucks. One of the nice things about the IS-2 though is it is a fast heavy tank. It does have a lot of speed behind it, meaning that it can go as fast as a Pershing around the place. You know, it's got a big old engine, and also funny enough, what you can do with it is you can go backwards with it. So you use this and also the engine behind it as armor. You turn the turret around and then they just keep shooting you in the engine as you kill them. You don't have to do it as much with this one, but with the 5.7 one it's definitely worth doing. This is definitely not a good pickup for 6.3. The Soviet 6.3 is already got, you know, a few tank destroyers which are okay, really not the best. T-44 is pretty good, but once again, matches up against heavy tanks is bad. 6, and you already get an IS-2 in the tech tree. Just play the 7.0 lineup and have fun. you know, ZSU-57, IS-3, and T-44. Just play that and enjoy yourself. If you're looking for another vehicle to pick up from this BR, the only other one I would maybe have a look at is the T-34-100, but to be honest, the Soviet premiums at rank 4 are pretty trash. It's been something that's been the case for a very, very long time. The next one we have, which is leaving us, is the Focke-Wulf 190 D9 for the Soviets. This is 7,420 GE, so it's the most expensive out of the ones at rank 4 for the Soviets. And just like the ground ones, the Soviets don't really have any great rank 4 options when it comes to aviation. And when it comes to the Focke-Wulf D9, once again, just like the Tempest, doesn't have access to any secondaries, so no bombs or anything like that. So this is a pure aerialistic or air arcade machine. Now, I really enjoy the D9. I think it's a fantastic aircraft. It doesn't climb as well as some of the other vehicles, but after it's dropping BR, so it doesn't face as many super props, it can have a really, really fun time. Once it gets up to altitude, it's great at diving, it's great at hitting enemies and then going back up, because they changed its rudder and also elevator. When I played it back in the day, it had a serious issue at high speeds where its rudder would lock up hard, and I mean you wouldn't even be able to control it, so you basically had to use the elevator and the ailerons to get it on targets, kind of like how the Scimitar actually runs right now. But it's much better at low speeds now, so you don't have to get yourself into those positions that much, and also 2 MG151s and 2 13s is enough to be able to clatter somebody. Because of the fact that the Soviets don't really have anything useful at rank 4 when it comes to their premiums, apart from the Yak-3 VK107, which is really good and also cheaper than the Focke-Wulf, so I'd probably pick up this one instead. But the Focke-Wulf 190 D9 is one of those where if you like the playstyle, you know, it's going to be great for grinding. It's got, you know, 498, 735 on the rewards, really high and a really low repair cost, so you're always going to make a sell in this thing. Very similar to the Yak-3, but the Yak-3 gets even more rewards, so just buy the Yak-3 if you want to get something. There's a lot of planes in rank 4 Soviets, and there's not many that I actually enjoy. The meta does favor them right now, where the meta is quick engagements and then going down, and quick engagements and then, you know, going down in altitude and fighting near the floor. This is really good for stuff like the Yak-3U, Yak-9UT, not the I-225, but stuff like the LA-9. But generally, I still think they're some of the weaker end planes compared to other nations, which is why picking up a premium of this BR isn't a terrible idea. Another thing to think about is the Su-11. The Su-11 is actually just a better version of the Su-9, and the Su-9 is already really good at its BR. It's just a better Me-262. So, just if you're thinking about getting something like this, is what, 60 GE more than the Focke-Wulf 190 D9, just pick this up. just get this one. You know, lower repair cost, decent rewards across the board, and it will research you pretty much the whole tech tree apart from these 4 vehicles. So yeah, the D9 is really fun, but it's just outclassed by other premiums that are going to be cheaper than it, or pretty much the same price. The next one that's getting removed is kind of a surprise to me. It's the J2M4 Kai, and the J2M4 Kai is actually a really, really good vehicle. If you've never played the J2s, I highly recommend them. The starter one, the J2M2 at 4.3, this one just kept going up and up and up in BR because it's insanely fun to play. And the other J2s are exactly the same. These are fantastic aircraft. And the J2M4 is also a fantastic aircraft as well. It has access to the Type 99 guns, which are absolutely awful, but you get 4 of them, and you can use them in a way which, you know, since you have a lot of ammunition, you can take out targets and then move on to the next one. These planes, and it also gets 260s, if I suppose you want to use them in ground, but there are much better options. These planes, in aerialistic, are fully good air superiority fighters. They have good climb on them, they generally feel really nice to use, and are not bad at anything. So the thing about a plane like this, since it's not bad at anything, is the fact that you can use it how you want. It all depends up on matchup. If you are against something like a Boom and Zoomer, then you can turn fight it and defensively fly, kick it off, and then smash it in the face. Then, if you're against something which is a turn fighter, you can energy fight it, or you can boom and zoom it, depending on how you want to. The J2M4 Kai is good at everything. And it's also pretty cheap for a rank 4. It's only 3,850 GE, which is half the price of the Focke-Wulf 90D9, and they're the same rank. And also, remember, this thing's going to go 50% off at some point. This is a steal, in my opinion, when it comes to the stuff that they're taking out. Easily the best option out of the ones that have been shown. And at the same time, the Japanese tech tree is incredibly fun. It's one of those where there's a lot of aircraft, especially the higher ranks of the propeller areas, which is stupidly fun to play. Like most of these aircraft that you see here, they're all unique and they're all fun. Same with rank 3 on these ones and rank 2 on these ones. So the only reason not to pick something like this up is if you already have the A6M5 Co, which is then, well, fair enough. Or, at the same time, if you are a person who wants to go through the tech tree, because spading these vehicles and moving on, I don't blame you. They're incredibly fun. I've had a great time in the Japanese tech tree, and it's always nice to go back to whenever they have like decals or anything like that in. So this to me is a great pickup. I highly recommend this one. A really, really fun plane. The next one they're removing is the Boomerang Mk.II, and this is kind of a surprise because it's very similar to the Boomerang Mk.I. Now, the Boomerang Mk.II is 1320 GE. It is also connected to the Boomerang Mk.I. What this means is with the rank 1, or the Mk.I, sorry, you have to purchase this one before you purchase this one. So if you are purchasing both to get this one, you are going to be spending 2,470 GE instead of just the cost of this. I wish they got rid of this practice, but it seems like they are doing. The only place it's going to be seen now is actually with the F-89s, which are right here. In these machines. So when it comes to the Boomerang Mk.I and 2, they're basically the same machine. The only real difference between them is, even with the modifications, you can see they're basically the same. The only difference is the Mk.II has slightly different rewards on it. So it has 390,555, where the Boomerang Mk.I actually has 390,660. So the Mk.I is actually better than the Mk.II in general. Just overall, what is weird is the fact that they just updated the models of these things as well, and they're taking out the Mk.II. I wonder why that is. You know, maybe a subtree, maybe Australia's coming, who knows. But it just seems a little bit odd that you would update the models and then remove them. I suppose they have different skins as well, but if you want the Mk.II experience, you know, you can just play the Mk.I. The only real reason to buy the Mk.II is if you want to use it in Air Arcade, a part of a lineup, whereas in a realistic, obviously you only use one specific vehicle. The Boomerangs have been outdated for a very long time in-game, and it's similar to other machines like the D521 or the D520, where both of these machines are just not great at their respective BRs, and it's because they are more turn fighters than anything else. They don't have the engine power to be able to keep up with a lot of the monsters that you find at these BRs, which make them kind of hard to play. But at the same time, they are Australian, they are interesting vehicles, and they are ones which hopefully at some point will, you know, grace us in a different way. One thing has to be understood about the Boomerangs is even though one is leaving, you can just buy the other one still, and it'll be 50% off soon. So you're not really going to get anything different. You know, the only difference, as I said, is the camouflage, the exhaust that you can see here, and then the rewards, which are worse on the Mk.II. So I personally won't bother with it unless you're an Air Arcade player. Then I would probably say it would actually be a decent pickup because they're very good in Air Arcade because of their maneuverability and their 20mm, but you're not really missing anything if you're a ground realistic or air realistic player. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orangetail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.